All right, here we are again. Jon and Tara podcast. Get off your phone, Tara. What the heck? Looks like you're drinking that good native root coffee.
Excellent.
With that Kerrygold butter in it.
It's perfection this morning.
Yeah. Is it good?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is good.
Yeah.
All right.
There you go. You can set that on there so it doesn't clink every time.
So,
Jon, I hear you've been getting some counseling.
Counseling?
By proxy.
It sounds like a disease.
You've been listening to quite a few of the Dr. John Deloney shows.
Yeah, they're entertaining.
Yeah, it does kind of seem like that. There's that component. It occurred to me the other day that these shows, there's a highly good component of them being helpful. But I think there's, we're drawn to them because it's kind of like listening in on reality TV.
Well, it's something you can listen to while you're working. It's something you can listen to and you don't have to watch. And so they're good. I mean, he's got, I would give him a 90% score.
That's still pretty good.
On his counsel, his advice to people.
That's still an A.
If you're in high school, yeah. So yeah, I think there are some things I'm going, whoa, slow down, don't do that, don't say that. And there's a lot of narratives that get made up,
Mm-hmm.
like, and sometimes he's right, and maybe more often than not he's right. But I think it sounds like leading the witness. It sounds like somebody comes in and says, I had a experience where ETs kidnapped me, and the person listening goes, were they small and gray? And the person goes, yeah, they were small and gray. And then they go, did they come in a ship with blue lights on it? It goes, yeah, they came in a ship with blue lights on it. And it's like, wait, you got to take down the statement first. You can't lead them.
Yeah, it is pretty funny sometimes. And you can hear it in the person's voice. Sometimes they're like, yes, oh my gosh, how'd you know? And sometimes they're like,
well, yeah,
exactly.
A little kind of, yeah. So, but yeah, I listen to it a lot of times. Maybe I like being sad. I don't know. Maybe there's not enough sadness in my life, so I listen to it to feel sad. I don't know, because sometimes I feel really sad for the person that's calling in, because I'm like, how can your life be that messed up?
Yeah.
How can things be that? How did you not see, your husband having 24 affairs or whatever it was? It's like, how does it go that far? There's a guy that called in, a guy called in the other day, and he lost his job. His wife lost her job during 2020, and so she said, "Why don't I start an OnlyFans page?" And he said, "Yeah." And okay. And I don't think the guy really knew what it was.
Oh.
And all of a sudden she started making bank. And so she's making tons of money. And then Dr. Deloney was asking, well, what does she do? Because the guy is starting to have problems. Like, well, we went out to dinner and these two guys came up and they were just fanboying all over my wife and wanted her autograph and wanted pictures with her. And they're like, we love your work. And he said, oh, that's terrible. And he goes, no, they were nice about it. But, and then Dr. John asks, what does your wife do on there? And the guy didn't know. And he doesn't want to look at it. He says, I'm not a porn guy. He says, I'm not really into anything like that. And so he goes, I don't know. And he goes, you don't know? He goes, you need to know. And he goes, well, the money's great. And and it's these passive beta males that, are the destruction of society, and across the board, not this guy in his own home with his wife having an OnlyFans, but just, you hear a lot of that kind of mentality, that behavior, and guys willing to, a lady called in and she's like, my husband complains that he works way harder than I do. She's like, I do 40, 50 hours a week. And he complains about everything and blah, blah, blah. And the lady the end of that call was, yeah, she's ready to get a divorce. And because he said he's going to divorce her because she doesn't work hard enough. And it's like, what? And so I get having issues. I get having complaints or problems. I get people disagreeing, because we've done all that. We've had disagreements. We've had, arguments. We've had, I wouldn't say, we've had argument fights, not fights. It's not like, hey, get the gloves. Let's go around, But it's like, oh man, how these people are even living in those situations,
Mm-hmm.
where they say they've been unhappy for 10 years. It's like, what? I don't get it, because I wouldn't stay that long, if things weren't, and maybe, some of the things when people call into the show, it's pretty drastic stuff. It's not like, my wife only likes to go to Olive Garden and I hate Olive Garden, and it's like, well, do you go? Yeah. Do you eat? What do you eat? Well, I can eat the chicken Parmesan. It's like, okay, so do you enjoy yourself?
I don't like the salad, but I'll have the soup.
Yeah. Only after a glass of wine can I enjoy myself. Yeah. Okay. So you're having fun at some point. Well, yeah. Okay, dude, you don't have a problem. Mm-hmm. Find a place to take your wife or don't, whatever. You don't have a problem. But when people are like, my husband cheated on me twice. One was with a good friend. I don't know what to do. I don't talk to that friend anymore, but she still comes over when we have parties. And it's just like, what are you talking about?
I think there are multiple components. So just starting out with number one is the difference between right and wrong.
Yeah.
And growing up with a good teaching, and moral compass of what is right and wrong. And if you grow up in an environment where your parents don't model that, maybe they teach it, but then they do something different. Their actions are not matching what they're saying and teaching, then that can really mess you up, right?
Yeah, totally.
So I think that's number one. Even if you grew up, let's say, in a religious household that taught the difference between right and wrong. Are you
just looking for my slippers?
Oh, I thought you were looking for a kitty.
No.
I don't know where they are.
All right.
So I think that I think most people grow up with being taught, the difference between basic right and wrong, but the environment can really skew that also. And then that aside, in addition to that, I think what happens is you get in situations in life where you feel stuck. And if you don't have enough skills or confidence or whatever to go, you know what, this is going to be really rough and I don't know how to do this, but I can, for example, there's varying degrees of this, right? A person might stay in a job that they really don't like. And maybe it's just, in the beginning, it's just the two of them, right? Before they have kids, maybe before a mortgage, it's easier to make a move job-wise, whatever. But the more that you are or feel strapped into life, the fewer options I think most people feel that they have, because it takes an equal or greater amount, at least a slightly greater amount of courage and determination to make a change, whether it's changing jobs or confronting your spouse who's cheating and they're the primary breadwinner. You have kids and you're like, I'm not going to, I'm at least going to show my kids till they're 18 how to live in the same household, even if they don't consciously know what's going on.
Yeah.
And so I think those things really strap people in.
Well, realistically, I've never been in a situation that I couldn't get out of. Mm-hmm. I've never, I'm a determined person, that has started and run businesses and been in many relationships and got out of relationships as soon as they're going bad.
You've also had a very supportive family. So even if, they would not, from what I understand, wouldn't outrightly say, we don't approve of your new girlfriend or wife or whatever, they would support you in the decisions that you made. And that can really also help a person.
I think
not
it's
be
part
stuck.
of that, but that part of that is part of my character. That, if we're talking primarily about my parents, they know that there was no talking to me about anything anyway. If I was doing it, I was doing it. And so my parents have never been the kind of people that would come up and give you unsolicited advice. But I think that also happened primarily because of the way I was when I was young. My parents were super naive when I was young and very innocent and calm, and they just went about their business. And they never even asked me if I wanted, what I wanted to be when I grew up, if I wanted to go to college, there was never, and there was definitely not any pressure to go to college or to do anything like that. But I was always such a self-activator. As soon as I had a means of transportation, I got a job off the property. My dad would pay me for certain things, cutting wood, splitting wood, mowing, that kind of stuff. And I walked to certain places to work, different farms and stuff when we lived in the country. And when we lived in the city, I went and I shoveled driveways and mowed and did that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. I always wanted to have my own money. Yeah. And so I was always very independent. So I think that kind of put my parents in a position where it's like, he's not gonna, I didn't do sports in high school or middle school or anything like that.
But I think that kind of paints the picture of why it probably is hard for you to understand why these people are staying in really bad situations. Is, first of all, your demeanor, I think it's as John says, Dr. John says, Deloney, you're Dr. John too in our household. But
I'm not a psychologist, I'm a brain surgeon.
Right. It is painting the picture, right? It's both and, you from a very young age, and there's fun and funny stories, of you as a little one being pretty witty and clever. Yeah. But also that, your parents were already that way, like not really interfering in your life, only just kind of gently guiding you. Yeah. And very supportive, and definitely taught right and wrong, right? And so I think that's a great example of, a great environment and demeanor to set yourself up for being able to not be stuck.
Well, I always took off, I was in the woods all day. I was outside all day. When we had a dog, I'd be running with the dog. I'd be playing, doing everything that I was doing. When I had a bike, I was gone on my bike all day. When I got my first snowmobile, I was gone on my snowmobile all day, and, back then we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have any way of communicating when you're mobile. And so it's just like, be home before it gets dark, and sometimes that didn't happen, and I wasn't out partying. I wasn't out hanging out with anybody. I was just out doing my stuff.
We were just talking, we had a nice Sunday get together with your parents the other day. Yeah. And we were talking about house parties because someone in your household growing up did have a house party. My
brother had a party in my parents' house once.
And I've never been to a house party. I mean, certainly not on that level. Yeah. And we were talking about, I can't even imagine, like, even being a teenager who teenagers typically are not thinking, to full adult capacity, assuming what if we presume even right. But you talked about a house party that you weren't there, but you knew of, that kids were actually throwing TVs through the window.
I was there.
Oh, you were there.
There was 2 house parties that I went to while I was in high school.
Oh, and wait, now there's a stipulation while you're in high school.
Yeah, no, that's after you're out of high school, if you get invited to somebody's house, most of the time it's for dinner, that kind of stuff. It wasn't, house party to me is the kids are having a party when the parents are gone, right?
Okay. No.
That's kind of the definition.
We're setting the parameters.
It's not the person that owns the house.
Right.
It's somebody that may live there. It's somebody that may know somebody. And it gets crazy. Well, at least the ones I went to.
Yeah.
The first one I went to, a guy almost died. And he had taken some drugs and was drinking and started having seizures. And he fell on the floor and started convulsing. And everybody ran out of the house. Everybody's screaming, I'm not going to say his name. He's dying. And they all ran out of the house. And I'm looking at him. I'm going, well, he's choking on vomit. Mm-hmm. And I reached down and cleaned the vomit out of his mouth and tipped him on his side so he could throw up because he's laying on his back throwing up. Mm. And I saved his life. So the first house party I went to, I saved somebody's life.
And you stayed there until the cops showed up, right?
Yeah.
The ambulance, and they're like,
what happened? I was the only one there. And I said, well, there was a party here. Everybody ran out when so-and-so here started convulsing. And I knew him, his family, his parents and stuff. So they could call his parents right away and that kind of thing. And I said, I think he drank. And I hadn't been drinking. I wasn't drinking. I raced motocross and did that kind of stuff. So I wasn't drunk. I didn't even drink. I didn't drink until after I was out of high school. Mm-hmm. So, I had tasted beer and I had tasted a drink once, but I was not into drinking. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, and they're like, have you had anything to drink? And I'm like, no, I don't drink, and they're like, well, thank goodness for him, because mm-hmm. I don't think they would have busted me anyway because I was the guy that stayed and saved this guy's life. So, they were like, thank goodness you were here and you did the right thing. And they're like, how did you know what to do? Well, my best friend in high school would have seizures. So we went through a little thing with a doctor or the school nurse one time about what to do. Mm-hmm. Put something hard in his mouth that he can clamp down on with his teeth. And if he's throwing up, turn him on his side, all this kind of stuff. So it was kind of this, I already knew. And so. Kind
of sweet, I'm tearing up, but sweet buddy system, like how cool. In life, like Jon, you made it to this level. You get to get trained, and you get to be your friends, kind of like.
Well, you don't want them to bite their tongue, right?
Yeah,
it's real practical. It's not, we didn't think it was cool. We were like, he's like, dude, if I ever start seizing, fucking drag me behind a dumpster or something. Don't let anyone see me. It's like. So I'm like, don't worry, no one's going to bug you, and so anyway, I knew what to do. I didn't have to put anything in this guy's mouth because he's throwing up. But
yeah.
So yeah. And then the second house party I went to, I had great experiences at house parties. Second house party I went to, somebody said, hey, let's go out here. There's a party. And I was like, okay. So I hopped in the car or I was driving, I can't remember. And we ended up out at this place and tons of people. I was out in the country and there was a house, it was like a split entry, kind of house. And we go in and it's just chaos and bedlam. And people are wasted. The party's going, the music's playing loud and people are like kicking things and pushing things over. And it's kind of like, we had like the beginnings of punk back then. And I think some people were trying to be that way. They're like, yeah, screw the capitalist system. All these things are materialistic things and, all that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden I hear windows breaking and I'm like, we need to go, mm-hmm. and we're like, there was no stopping it. I was like, hey, you guys, you need to stop, you got to stop doing this. And the guys that made sense to, they went out with us, they were mm-hmm. like, yeah, we better get out of here. Mm-hmm. And then this giant TV came out the bay window and they just destroyed the place and the family moved out of town.
Yeah, you said they just demolished the house after that?
Yeah, they tore the house down. It was so bad. They damaged all the walls. I don't know what happened after. They might have set fire to it, right? Mm. But yeah, they demolished the house and
Yeah, no, sure.
family moved out of town.
Yeah, insurance wouldn't cover your own. Well, I suppose
if your kid was there doing it. There's clauses in insurance for family things. Like if I ran into your car in the driveway accidentally, our insurance wouldn't cover it because they'd consider it a domestic dispute, and that type of thing. So, the only reason I know about that is because I accidentally ran into my own vehicle one time, and my insurance wouldn't cover it. So they were like, well, we don't know if that was you or your girlfriend, your wife, or whatever, being mad at each other. And I was like, good grief.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, unfortunately, if it wasn't too bad, usually it's just a bump or something.
But I think it cracked like the tail light, so it was a little bit more expensive.
Yeah. So. Well, depending on the vehicle, that could be a strange component part that's.
Well, yeah, if
$1,200.
If it's a Toyota, it could be $200. If it's a BMW, it could be $1,200. Yeah.
That's why I got the Yoda.
So yeah, my first house party, I saved somebody's life and stayed there for the police and ambulance to show up. And my second house party, I left before the police showed up because it was just chaos. And then I never went to another house party.
Yeah.
People would say, hey, there's a party going on over here. I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. I'm not going. Yeah. Next one was probably going to be somebody caught in a house fire and I'd have to run in and save them. I'd be your bald husband right now with burns on my back or whatever, because I'd have to save them. I wouldn't be able to not do something like that. So. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that goes to the character of what we started talking about. My willingness to run towards the problem, is something that doesn't help me understand why people wouldn't leave bad situations that they can leave. If you have a wife or a husband that's cheating on you, that's not the problem you run towards. You run away from that kind of problem. Because you're going to get a disease. You're going to have a jealous spouse coming after you. You're going to, or a jealous lover of somebody,
There's problems you can't even imagine.
You can't. And you might not know who it is, So it might be a woman. I mean, a lot of women murderers out there, your wife cheats with a husband and the woman comes to your house and she's got a gun and you get shot because of and it's just not a good way to be. I did get since we're telling John stories here.
This John hour.
So one of my ex-girlfriend from high school, she was married. I was not. We seen each other at a.
Oh, wait. Okay. My ex-girl, obviously she wasn't married in high school.
No.
Okay.
No. So she was my ex-girlfriend from high school. After we broke up, she went out with a guy. They got married and had a kid. And I was at a local bowling alley / bar and grill / club, right? We're in a small town, right? So it's the
next, right, with the gas station on the end.
Yeah, we call it the bowl, grill and drill. You start out bowling, you end up eating, you go to the dance club, and then you got a date.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So how many years later?
Oh, geez. Lots of years, 6-7 years out of high school, something like that. And I had a kid, but I wasn't married, and he was full custody. And we ended up talking with each other. We saw each other. We hadn't seen each other in that entire time. And she's like, she did the high school. Oh my God. And I'm like, oh my God. And if you listen to this, I'm sorry that you're hearing that, but I knew she was married and I did not want to, I didn't want to be seen but it was a very public venue. Mm-hmm. And so we chatted, and then people saw us chatting, right? Mm. Well, like the next week I got a phone call from her husband, and me and him didn't get along in high school. He was a year or two older than me, and we didn't get along. And I was kind of I was a scrapper in high school, so there was even older guys were afraid of me, and because I would fight at the drop of a hat, and I wasn't afraid to fight, especially one-on-one. That did not scare me at all. So, so there had been words between us, and we each had reputations, and we knew of each other, and so I get this call from him, and he says, he's swearing, and he's like, da, 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 da. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And he goes, so-and-so told me that they saw you talking to my wife, and I found this card, and it says, love, Jon. And it was like Valentine's or something. And I said, whoa, 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 whoa. I said, first of all, I broke up with her. when, and I said, I've been married at that time. I said, I've been married, and I would not cheat with someone who's married, especially somebody I know. That's like, and, because, when you live in a small town, you know everybody, and almost everybody hunts. Everybody's got guns. Everyone's got rifles, and, and hunters, they shoot things from long distances. And, and in my mind, I'm like, I ain't messing with that
hunting buddies and dogs.
I ain't messing with that kind of thing. I'm out back.
Someone's got a pit in the backyard.
I'm out back digging a hole in my garden, and somebody, pops me from, 1,000 yards away, and I fall in my own hole.
Not that you've thought about this or anything.
I've thought about it many times, that there's reasons why not to do certain things, right?
For sure.
We have to know the consequences in life, right? Mm-hmm. And so I told him that, and then I said, you and I are the only guys that she's ever been with. And so I understand why she wanted to talk to me. She needed some closure or whatever. She wanted to, she said, if my parents were nicer, would we have stayed together? And I'm like, I didn't break up with you for your parents. Don't blame your parents. It was all you.
It was me.
Well, it was her and it was me. I was young, and there's, young guys, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, I said, you could have your closure. I said, it wasn't your parents. Just go on with your marriage and your life and all that kind of stuff. And it's not, and yes, that's what she was going to do anyway. There was no like getting together or anything like that. And I told him the whole story. I spelt it all out. And then I said, I do know that there's a guy that she works with, and his name is Jon. I don't know how he spells his name. Mine is Jon. And he goes, yeah, this is Jon. He goes, that's why I thought it was you. He goes, you're the only Jon I know. Other than that guy, he knew about that guy. He said, you're the only Jon I know that spells his name that way.
Sounds like he already locked his mind on you.
Oh, definitely.
And so,
definitely.
When you're enraged, and
tunnel vision.
It must be this guy. Yeah. And then, because didn't you say
vision.
He was like, okay, thanks. And just like, that was it?
He knew who the guy was. I said, I do know that she works with a guy named Jon. I don't know how he spells his name. And he goes, oh, all right, thanks.
Yeah.
And he knew right away, because I'm sure he had heard his name, or maybe at a Christmas party, or maybe they'd had an issue with a guy at work that he didn't know who it was, or I don't know, maybe he was sending flowers. He got the card to the house. Maybe there was flowers, and so, yeah. I never asked anybody what happened to that guy.
Even in small towns.
They lived in the big town after that. When he called, they had lived up in Minneapolis. So
in the big city.
In the big city. In the big city where we don't go. No, it's a crazy story. I'm glad. Here's what I'm happy about, that I got a phone call. I'm glad he didn't show up at the door, because it would have been my proclivity to subdue him and then find out what's going on. If somebody showed up on my property and they were angry and they were screaming at me, I would have fought first and asked questions later.
Well, and that kind of says something to, when you have difficult situations like this, how to handle it. And this tends to be a guy thing, just a guy will confront a guy, typically, right? Yeah. And probably maybe it was just expedient for him, but for him to call you, right?
Easier over the phone. There's no threat of violence over the phone.
Right. Yeah. And whether he thought of that or not, it was good.
Yeah.
Like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he would have fought too. I mean, it would have been a pretty good scrap. Hopefully nobody would have had any weapons, but there's always the chance of that too. So
I have another related topic, kind of like kind of scrapping. So we know someone who, I just heard the story via text. She texted me, and apparently her neighbor's 2 pit bulls chased her. And if she hadn't had her, I don't know, her van was obvious. She said, if I hadn't jumped in my van, I don't know what would have happened. So it sounds like she jumped in her van, closed the door kind of thing. And she's like, thank goodness, my grandbabies weren't around,
geez, yeah.
And she's like, I'm getting a gun, and I'm like, all right, I hope you're getting some good training, and I was like, I'm sure I can speak for Jon, that if you have any questions, I mean, he's trained a lot. He really knows, and a lot is an understatement. I said, he's trained professionals, in the field.
Yeah.
And he's very aware about how to train women.
In the field of handling dogs? No.
Law enforcement.
You just shoot them.
In law enforcement, I would say, like, you've worked in training law enforcement and
hopefully she doesn't live in city limits, because if you discharge a weapon in city limits, you're in trouble. But in the country, you're okay.
Depends on.
Yeah,
I mean, typically that's true.
2 dogs chasing you is a problem because they act as a pack, and they probably would have tore her up. And so they need to be. If she lived close to us, I'd go take care of it for her. But those dogs need to be put down.
Yeah.
Yeah. The neighbor, first of all, should be responsible, but you can only make them responsible after something happens, and you don't want something to happen.
Right.
I mean, they could rip her thigh off her leg, and she'd never walk correctly again.
Right.
Be in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. It's crazy. So
maybe that was a little bit of a dramatic example.
It's a dramatic example, Tara. No, it's not. I mean, it happens, and you hear about it and you see it. And if people could react and respond before they're attacked, if a dog chases you and the dog is, there's dogs like chasing cars, and that's like entertainment for them. But when they chase a person, that dog needs to be put down. And that's what would happen. In the country, that's what happens.
Well, even not all dog owners, but some would even know that. They'd be like, if you had a dog that did that, you would do it yourself.
It would be trained or it'd be put down.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, you're going to get sued.
Yeah.
If you have a dog and it attacks somebody, you can get sued.
Yeah.
And you could lose everything.
In addition to having on your conscience that you had a dog that did that, hurt someone like that. Yeah, we and in one of the online schools I run, we have a series on natural pet health.
Yeah.
And one of the first classes, so our teacher is one of the first holistic vets that ever existed.
Let me say this.
Yeah.
If people listen to this and they think I sound harsh, I'm not being. I love animals, right? I love animals and I love humans. But there's humans we put in jail, and there's humans that we execute, and there's animals that we need to. You can't just put an animal in a jail, right? You can't just. The human, that would be the owner can. The owner can put the animal in a kennel in their yard or on a leash, and that's what they need to do. And if that dog attacks a person once, it needs to be put down. But like I said, country justice is if your dog is chasing me to hurt me and I'm armed, or even if I'm not armed, it's just fine for me to kill that dog.
Boy, we're getting into some really deep topics.
Well,
it's true. I'm
like
not
she
disagreeing.
said, what if she had her grandkids?
Totally.
Everybody might go, "Oh man, you're mean to animals. You're this, you're that." Well, what if a pit bull rips off a baby's face?
Or arm?
Yeah.
Just they're maimed and traumatized.
Come on, Well, you know why they rip off faces so much? Because that's what they go for when they fight. They're going for the neck and the face. So that's when they attack little kids, they go for the face. So you can't take a chance.
No, not at all. And that's, I think, in one of these classes, so a student got really defensive. Like, bullies are, pitties, I think she called them, are our dogs too, and
No, they're fighting machines.
Right, and that's what this vet was rather neutral about it in the sense. Pragmatic is probably the better word, because he was like, he's gone in to rescue from rescue animals.
He's rescued fighting pit bulls. He's rescued dogs that were in fighting rings and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And he's saying these dogs are being bred and trained for fighting.
He's been attacked.
Yep.
And he still rescued the dog. But that wouldn't be me. I'm not. That's not my calling, to get bit by a pit bull and save its life.
I think it's really admirable.
It's admirable for sure.
Well, I'm saying of you too, that when this goes back to the beginning of our talk, right? How do people not get out of bad situations? And a bad situation is having an animal that is harmful. Yeah. And either you can't have people over, or, the postman is always getting chased, or whatever. That's analogous to staying in a bad situation, right? Is not being able to make the hard decisions. And that's life. I mean, there are times where you really have to make some tough decisions. And, like even when we've always had cats, and, when little kids come over, we're teaching the kids, and we're keeping an eye on the cats right by them.
You have to let the animal sniff you first. You can't just go running in, grab its head, pull its tail, reach for its face. You got to let them sniff you. They got to know you. And, it's just natural reactions. That's how animals kind of scout out each other. They sniff each other. They sniff butts, but and they kind of look at each other, and then when one lays down, that's the submitting, and it's okay, and if they want to play, they play, and a lot of times they play fight.
So I'm going to jump in, and I'm going to say this is where guys get a bad rap. In this, I'm not saying it's justified. I'm saying as women, we, and I'm generalizing here, but I think it's a fair generalization.
There's truth to stereotypes.
Often a fair amount of truth, would be like, no, don't hurt Spot,
don't hurt Spot.
Well,
the dog, Spot the dog.
Well, maybe I should make it like a less dramatic example, right? So here's one. I remember when I was little, my mom babysat for a while, just a few kids, or maybe just my friend was over. No, I think she was actually babysitting my best friend at the time. We were in elementary school. And, it's kind of like sisters. When you spend a lot of time together, you eventually start fighting, even if you're good friends at other times. And we were fighting, me and my friend, and I was really upset with her, and I ended up pulling her down several stairs. Like she was on her butt, and I don't even know, of course, I don't know what it was about. I just remember the instance. And I think, she stopped coming over for a while after that, for quite a while. And I think that was the right thing to do. And her dad was rather strict. And this is kind of what I'm getting at, where guys or dads kind of get a bad rap, where they'll say, well, that's enough. You're not going over there for a while. And, as a kid, you're crying, and you're like, no, I really like her. And it was just this, and you're like, how long is that going to be? Well, I don't know. We'll see, And so it seems really harsh what the dad is doing. And it may be to the wife as well, some kind of similar circumstance, like, no more of that for a while. But guys typically, I'd say, I'll even go as far to say a real man will draw the line, right?
Yeah. Is that where I comment?
Yeah, I have a tickle in my throat.
Okay, yes. A real man will draw the line. Yeah, there has to be boundaries, right? And usually the boundaries are set by the man, where the mom says, okay, if you can't calm down and play nice with your brother, I'm gonna have to tell your dad when he gets home, and you're gonna have to deal with him. And then that's usually when the boy straightens up. It's like, oh crap, I don't want dad after me. You know, I thought I'd get away with a lot with mom, and I did, but you know, and you know, moms can discipline too, but I think it's a really good aspect to pull in the big guns when you need it, you know, and that might mean, you know, hey, dad was going to take you hunting this weekend, you know, and if you aren't doing your chores and you're not finishing your schoolwork and you're not getting stuff done, we're going to have to talk about whether you can go hunting or not. You know, incentives are very powerful. You know, I think that's a good way to say it. I hear lots of threats, you know, when you're in a store and there's a mom with kids and the kids are acting up, and, you know, I hear lots of kind of whiny threats, you know, like, all right, we're not going to here. We're not, you know, it's like, burr, burr, burr. And I'm like, geez, you know, just slow down. Did you feed the kids before you brought them to the store? You know, I always did. I was a single dad for 12 years and I went to the grocery store hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times with my son. And we would eat lunch or we would eat breakfast and then we'd go to the store. And, you know, he still wanted candy, but he wasn't starving looking at all this food, you know, because kids feel, they don't rationalize under a certain age, you know, basically under about 8 years old. Maybe for some kids now it's 12 years old, but they only feel and they get reactive to what they're feeling. They're not rationalizing, oh yeah, we're getting groceries so we can go home and cook dinner. You know, that's not what they think. They think food, eat, hungry, pain. I want that, you know. I'm hungry, I'm angry, I'm hysterical, you know. It's I'm not getting what I want. You know, and they might even feel mom's not taking care of me or providing for me, and that's why they're so frantic, you know. Usually they can't verbalize that kind of thing, but, you know, mom is supposed to be there to keep the belly full and the temper and the emotions calm and the, you know, and dad's supposed to be there to, you know, train and teach for life, for heavy situations and provide a skill set. And, you know, mom teaches skills. I learned how to cook and clean from my mom. I learned how to work and do tool making and how to, you know, cut down trees and how to build buildings and how to make cement and how to sharpen knives and how to, you know, load guns and how to make guns from my dad, you know.
So I illustrated how I think men can be misunderstood, you know, for a characteristic that I think is actually very good, that is being really, they're being vilified for these days. And
well, that's just psyop, pop culture psyop bullshit, you know. They've co-opted the universities, they've co-opted the news media, and it's just, you know. So
to be specific, it's where men, you know, hold the standard, draw the line. But I think on the other end, so men are either being vilified for being that way, or there's also counterculture coming up saying, men, this is how you be men, you know? And I think young men are misunderstanding and are being brutes, right?
Well, that's because they're feminized. They're completely feminized, and then they come out to the opposite end of the spectrum where they're telling women what they need to do. And this is part of what the PSYOP wanted. They wanted the division because they knew that women would get the way they are and then men would go overboard and be ultra masculine, and then they could point at it and say, oh, see, that's toxic masculinity. And it's just a reaction.
So where do you think women...
And part of the problem is you can make money off it now. So these people that are online screaming and hollering, they're just making money, and it's all clickbait.
So where do you think women in their own way are misunderstood?
I think women aren't misunderstood. I think women nowadays are, you know, you say it very well because your grandma said it most excellently. We did not know we were poor until we got a television, because they lived around their peers. They lived in a town, and most of the people, I'm sure there was a couple of families in town that owned businesses that had more money, but probably didn't flaunt it because they didn't want there to be such an offset, just like I said, I don't want to be the richest guy in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to be, but I don't want to show everybody that I am.
Or you still had to go to the big city, whatever the big city was, to get the finer cloth or, something.
Yeah, and there might have been a mercantile in town where they,
maybe they could order in something.
Yeah, they just go tell the store owner, we're looking for this. Can you get it? And, that's the way things work. But your grandma said that. She said, we didn't know how poor we were until we watched TV. And TV it's a falsehood, right? And so now these women watch other women online and they see they're on a yacht, they're in a jet, they're all, you look at Instagram and you look at the women on Instagram and you might think your life is horrible. But what you don't know is most of these, what they call influencers, are renting time. They'll rent time with a car. They'll rent time with even a guy model. They'll rent time with, if I was a buff dude, like ripped up and 2% body fat and had bulging muscles and I was taking roids and I was looking the part, right? I would rent myself out to hot chicks that want to look good. And I would color my hair. I'd grow a beard and then I'd shave the beard off and then I'd color my hair. I'd wear glasses all the time. I'd be at angles where you couldn't really tell that it was me. I wouldn't be straight on. And that would make...
You've thought this out.
You can see it. You can see it. I've seen multiple guys in pictures with women. It's the same damn guy because I can tell because of the pecs or the obliques or the thighs or whatever. You can't tell by the face because they're never looking at the camera.
Yeah.
They're always like, and I'm not good with faces. I'm good with motion and I'm good with body types. I'm not good with faces. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, you can tell. And you see multiple female models on different things. And so it's like Hollywood, right? There's a cadre of people that are making a ton of money and they're acting, and that's fine. That's great. Good for them. But it's not good for young women. It's not good for young men, because here's the nature of a guy, right? There's essentially 3 ways to gain wealth, right? You can inherit it, you can go out and make it, or you can steal it, right? Yeah. And so for most people, inheritance isn't an option. And for most people, working for it isn't an option because you'll work. I mean, guys will work, guys will make money, but they're not going out to make billions. Very, very few billionaires, right? Mm-hmm. Very few millionaires relative to the population, right? Mm-hmm. So guys in a guy's mind, and the wealthy guys know this, right? The wealthy people know this. If there's too many people that are too poor, they're going to come and steal your shit. They're just going to take it. Mm-hmm. They're called pirates. There's pirates for a reason, right? And there's a justification on many levels for it. But that's in the nature of men, right? And so if you take that concept and you extrapolate it across everything, women will know how to deal with a man.
You have to fill in the gaps.
I'm not going to.
What?
You're going to have to think about it because you didn't ask for that. That's not knowledge I can give you.
I did ask for it.
You did not ask for it. I gave it. I gave the premise, right? Yeah. You do not get you don't get the content.
You're gonna leave me hanging here?
You have to think about it. This is how you become a better woman, right? You wanted to do a podcast.
John's lesson 101, how to train your wife.
This is not lesson 101. This is lesson 1010.
Yeah.
This is up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Guys know this. Guys know this, and you can't give the knowledge. You have to tease out the thought process, right? It's like you come to a martial arts class. So that's how we met. You came to my martial arts class, right?
Yeah.
I didn't show you advanced knife disarms because you didn't have any skill. You weren't even coordinated. I walked through the door. So the martial artists that go to our gym, right? The high level martial artists can make people trip just with their movement. They don't have to touch them. And so
ninjas.
No, it's not. Yeah. It's not chi. It's not. No. It's confusion based upon good motion, right? And if I moved aggressively at somebody and then I shifted and I moved back, if they don't have that type of skill set, they're going to be shocked. They're going to move. Their body's going to try to compute. They're not going to be able to compute my motion because they, like you said, you walked in. You said it perfectly. People walk down the street in straight lines, right?
Well, it's like
martial artists see angles.
Yeah. Well, like when we were in Brazil, I mean, if you're used to flat sidewalks and walkways here,
you're going to trip in Brazil.
You are totally going to trip. Yeah. There's like the sidewalks are all cracked.
Most of them are paralelepípedos. They're
that too.
Yeah. They're cobblestone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is better if they would be cobblestone, but usually there's trees. They have tree lined, and so there's tree
roots pushing up the sidewalks.
Yeah. So
yeah. So
okay, I'll think about that today.
So getting back to inheritance,
how to be a better wife,
earning,
how to be a better
or piracy, and yeah, that's it. And I
marry a rich guy. I can work with him, or I can steal it from him.
That's not how it works for women.
Okay. No. I'm just trying to draw the lines, connect the dots here.
Yeah, I can tell you're confused. This is a classic moment. This is great.
Hey, and I'm not like, I mean, I get okay. Next time I'll be like, oh, I get it. Anyways.
Well, it's, as we see what's happening in our country and as we see what's happening around the world, we have to go back to fundamentals, right? The only way to correct a system is to go back to the building blocks of that system, right?
Yeah.
Or the building blocks of a new system, which are going to be the same relatively as the old system.
You're going to use a lot of the same blocks.
You're going to use a lot of the same blocks, yes. Yeah. And so you hear people talk about based people, right? Guys that are based, and they have these traditional conservatives. They call them trad cons now because these faggot ass young people that don't know how to talk. They don't use 90% of the colloquial statements. Like a pig in a poke. Or from the frying pan into the fire, if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. All these phrases, they use them all up. Like they'll be like, if you can't take the heat, get out of the frying pan. And you're like, what? And you're like, yeah, it's like when you poke a pig. No, that's gross. You don't do that. It's a pig in a poke. You don't poke a pig. But they use them all wrong. It's like a hog on ice. All these things. It's like. It's just, it drives me crazy. Yeah. I need to listen, and this is what guys are doing right now. Mm-hmm. Us trad cons, us based dudes, we're listening. Mm-hmm. We got our radar up. We're paying attention. We're making sure we know which direction to go if we have to go, and who is who and what is what, and. It's a thing right now, and it's a very scary thing. I don't want to live through this kind of thing. I don't want to die, but I don't want it to happen. Right? That's what I mean when I say I don't want to live through it. I don't want it to happen. And all my trad con friends, all my base buddies, they don't want it to happen either. We do not want to have to, for lack of a better term, flip a switch. I don't want that for me. I don't want it for you. I don't want it for our friends. I don't want it for our relatives, because that changes everything, into the future. You become a different person and you never are the person that you were. And, I want peace, if I'll say it a little differently, I heard it said before, but if somebody takes away my peace and I have to fight for it, it's not going to be a peaceful time for whoever and whatever is in the way. And that's not a good, I don't want to be thinking about that every day. I don't want to be walking down the street thinking, you know, is there going to be air raid sirens? Is there going to be, are all the lights going to go out? Is there, you know, and, you know, I hope and pray that there are people in power that care, you know, not just about themselves, but about the people around them, you know, because we could tell the ones who care only about themselves, they're the ones getting stinking rich. And, you know, and that's not a good thing for them either. I mean, they think money will buy them security, but they're not even the people that they can never, they're the people that can hire security. They're not the people that are their own security. And there's a massive difference between those two people, because you're hiring people that could be pirates, right? Mm-hmm. And they could just steal everything you have. Mm-hmm. And you can't stop them because you've hired a whole force of people with guns and training to be on your compound. You know, mm-hmm. It'll just be their compound, you know, and there's nothing you can do. And they don't understand this. That's how dumb they are.
What are the components or characteristics of a person who is their own security? I mean, paint that picture a little bit more. Okay.
It's the way, it's the way I've lived my entire life. You know, I've been training for something my entire life and didn't know what it is. You know, and I can see now what it could be, but I also know what I don't want it to be. And a person, I laid it out. I mean, you know, anybody wants to know, they just look up the terms I said and then watch some of the things and then they'll understand, you know, it's.
So I think the irony is that in order to have peace, you have to be willing to fight for it in a way. And I don't always mean it's not necessarily the literal fighting.
Yeah, but we'd rather fight for it with words. We'd rather fight for it with policies. We'd rather fight for it with standards and morals and this way society is set up. So we don't want to, guys like me don't want to have to fight for the way things were.
So this goes back to the beginning of our talk about relationships, and the same principles apply, right? In order to have peace, you know, we hear that that's a common phrase among couples, right? Or even guys will say, I want peace in my home. I want to come home and have peace. And then women will parrot that as well. And I do mean parrot it because I've heard that on podcasts in particular. And a woman will say, I just want peace, you know, but is not, anyways, it's going down a little bit different rabbit hole. But the thing is, if you want peace, you have to be willing to do what is challenging to have that. And hopefully there are different levels of problem solving, right? Yeah. There are more evolved ways. There's conversation, like you said, or policy. And policy a policy in a home just might be like, we don't yell at each other. You know, I will not allow you to call me names. You know, that's a home policy, right? And so it's better if you can resolve issues first by discussing, you know, because as you've said before, and it makes more and more sense as the years go by, that if you can't resolve something by talking, eventually people will get to the physical level.
That's all there is. There's verbal communication and there's physical communication. And so
getting back to my example too, of when I was little, my best friend was over a lot. We were fighting. I took it to a physical level and her parents said, we're cutting this off. You cannot be in physical proximity to her because this is what's happening. Yeah. And I think what you're talking about is on a greater level as a society. Hopefully we can still resolve at the discussion level and the policy level rather than or like the neighbor our friend who was attacked by the two neighboring dogs.
Well, chased. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Chased. Could have been attacked, nearly attacked. If they could have solved that, or I don't know if there's preceding incidences of this, but solve it before.
Well, there would have had to been for that person to say, I'm going to get a gun. It has to have happened before.
Probably.
Many times because she's a very calm and patient person.
Right. Reasonable person. And so I think those are all just great examples. And especially within a relationship, the person, getting back to the original topic, first topic, the person who seems stuck, like you said, I can't believe that people stay in these situations, are the people who won't do the difficult thing of trying to discuss.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, there can be many reasons. Maybe they're shut down. Maybe they don't feel that they can reason. Maybe the other person is not reasonable.
Yeah.
They could be afraid of it turning physical.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's emotional abuse as well, which is just as, if not more, harmful. And so I think a big part of it, if learning to communicate, is so imperative.
Yeah, I consider emotional abuse physical.
Yeah, I did a podcast recently with one of our teachers and colleague, and I would say acquaintance friend, who wrote a book on the healing powers of plant medicine for sexual trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And fascinating talk. And I mean that, and that's kind of an obscure way to say, but I opened up by asking her, how did you even consider writing about your sexual abuse from her father?
Yeah.
And because we're taught, so many of us, to not disrespect our parents, or, and even in something so serious as that, she's made a statement, and I'm not going to give it enough justice, so definitely listen to the podcast, but she made a statement that just went in deep. And she said, I decided to give it back. It wasn't my burden. It wasn't my thing to carry. Mm. And I said, wow, because when you go through something traumatic, especially malice from another person, our phrase, you typically want to get back at them. And you're saying to give it back. Mm-hmm. And it was amazing conversation and just discussing, it came back to that as well. And how did I get onto this point?
Well, that's how she dealt with the abuse. That's incredible. By the way, what is the podcast and where do people find it?
So it's on my YouTube channel, Tara Bachland, and it's with Amanda Dilday. She also goes by Amanda Nicole, and her book is Flowers for a Girl, and I really recommend the book as well. And
you spell Tara, Tara, Bachland, Baklund.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's where I was getting at, is I asked her, I said, as far as I know, I wasn't physically abused, but I said, as someone I assume who has spoken with many people who have been abused physically, emotionally, let me know what you think. Do you think that physical abuse in a way is easier to get over than emotional abuse? And
I think they both do similar damages, but emotional abuse is more internal, right?
Yeah.
Physical abuse is more external. And so it's probably easier to say, okay, that person punched me.
It's more clear.
Beat me up. I need to stay away from them, out of the proximity.
Where emotional abuse,
you're still going to have the emotional problems that go along with that if it's a family member, right? Or if it's someone you cared about.
Mm-hmm. If it's confusing.
Yeah, if you just get mugged and beat up, you're going to be like, well, I'm not going in that part of town anymore.
Right. It doesn't seem personal.
Yeah. You're probably still going to have trauma, like you're going to react to certain things adversely, but it's something you can get away from. If it's in your house or if it's in your family, that's probably the most difficult thing, because you can't get away from it, because, your whole life is going to be, holidays and gatherings and all that kind of stuff that you either do go to and deal with it, or you can't go to and then you have to deal with it. And
you grow up around gaslighting. Gaslighting is a normal activity, not only by the perpetrator, but the people around who know what is going on, or
say that it didn't go on.
Right, exactly.
They believe the perpetrator and they say that couldn't have happened.
So even though I kind of suspected this might be the case, I was still, part of me was still surprised when she said yes, that the physical abuse is easier to delineate and kind of and heal from in a way. Although, of course, there's the emotional component. And that was what I suspected because, for me, well, Jordan Peterson makes a delineation too. He said true trauma is when, maybe it's not even trauma, but I think it says trauma as opposed to a difficult thing happening in life is when there's malice. So someone intentionally causes harm. If it was an accident or just, the mugger, and you can reason that they're just providing for their family, But if it's like they're going after you and target you and like want to harm you, that is very different. And
you're talking about family.
Well, and particularly family, someone near you that's extremely, or a spouse or someone like that that's supposed to care.
Well,
right?
I think the things that people don't ever, maybe they get to later after a abusive situation, they get to the point where they realize that the person has problems. That person, it's not you they were actually after. It's like maybe it's the archetype of you. Maybe it's the character they see in you that they don't have in themselves, or they're jealous of something. We've had a family member literally say, "I'm jealous of your relationship," and then go on to try and destroy mine and yours relationship, and dredged up, or riled up a lot of family members through, like you said, gaslighting, through lying about situations and saying things and accusing things, not to us, but behind our back, saying this is what happens, this is what's happening, and then that ostracizes people. People don't know what to do. But that's how a person like that gains control and feels better about themselves, because then there are people around them going, "Oh, I'm so sorry that happened," and they get justification for what they're doing, or they get power from the situation. And that's very sad. But I'll say this, it's not you, it's that person.
When you grow up with it, it's really hard to start differentiating.
Yeah.
And
well, that type of person creates a you and me are the same person kind of situation. We're in this together. It's us fighting that. And you don't realize as a child they're using you. And when you become independent, they generally explode and blow up and have problems. And
I remember what I was getting at too, talking about this interview with Amanda. I do really recommend the book. It's really poetic in a way, so it's not like a really difficult emotional read. And what I found too is from my experience of emotional trauma, it was very relatable. And that's what I was getting at, is I was through reading her book and through experiences, I was like, wow, there's some real similarities. But without getting into details and, storylines, it has a real healing component to it. So I do recommend that. And it's enjoyable in its own unique way too.
Yeah.
So, wow. So that could be another reason people having a hard time getting out of a situation. You can be so enmeshed, right?
Yeah.
That it's hard to even see your way out. I mean, because you think we've been together for so long, especially if you've been together for quite a while, you've created so many of these entanglements, right?
Yeah.
And they can be positive and they can be negative.
Yeah. Yeah. When we met, you were 19.
I was 18.
18. And then we got married, you were 19. And we've been together for 24 years. Yeah. So what my point is we've been together longer than you were alive before we got together.
Right.
So I think that's pretty awesome.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it'll be a few years, then.
It'll be for me too.
Woo!
Yeah. Because once we've been together for 31 years, then, so we were 12 years difference.
Still are.
Our maturity met in the middle, though. I was probably closer to your age as far as maturity goes, and you're probably closer to my age. But maybe we didn't meet in the middle. Maybe we passed each other.
Overshot it.
Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah, we joked we met at about 25, which is the the age they say that when your brain matures.
It's
right?
a good age.
The frontal lobe.
It's a good age for guys. 25 to 30 is a good age to, if a woman wants to get serious with a guy, that's a good age.
25 to, that he's 25
in
to 30.
between 25 and 30, yeah. Well, at least, for me, I wasn't immature per se in a standard sense that people would think about immaturity. I was just so active and so about doing my own stuff. And, I was a multiple business owner by the time you met me. I was running a martial arts school. I was teaching. I was about to open up other martial arts schools. I was training. I had 6 instructors training under me that I was training so that I could populate those schools. And I had a huge plan, and that age right in there was a good time for you to meet me and for us to develop a relationship, because I was solidifying my life. I was stopping some of the more wild things I was doing, like racing and that kind of stuff, motocross, snowcross, flat track quads, mountain bikes, all that kind of stuff, and getting more serious about my business life. Mm. I'd always made money. I had a career. By the time I was, when I was 19, I chose to become a machinist and a tool maker. And so I had a chosen career, and now I don't have martial arts schools now. I have a machine shop. Mm-hmm. And we do micro molding and micro machining, and we're some of the best in the world at it. And so my career has gone on. Mm-hmm. So yeah, interesting times.
Yeah. Well, great talk. Now, Jon, can you understand why some people stay in difficult situations?
Nope. Yeah. I could listen to a situation and I could understand somebody's problematic rationale, but I think it's inherent on every human being to become as much as they can be within their situations, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and all other lees that they can be. But I think most people get out of high school and they stop learning. And then there's a grouping of people that go to college and get out of college and stop learning. And then there's the people that are successful in business, and those people never stop learning. And so I think everybody should model people that are at a higher level than them to whatever degree they can, and then strive to work towards something more and better for themselves, even if it's only in one area, mm-hmm. even if it's just mentally, because that will lend itself to the other areas, even if it's just physically, mm-hmm. because once you are physically better, that will lend to your emotional and mental state. Mm-hmm. Or even if it's just spiritually, if you're working on yourself spiritually and you become convicted that way, then you decide, I need a better emotional life. I need a better mental life. I need a better physical life. I should have a better business life or a better work life, or, I should, and so if you just go after one area, that's good enough, because it will bleed into the other areas in your life. Mm-hmm. And so that would be my message for the day. And then if everybody did that, we'd have a great world. Yeah. So, and you are where you are, understand you are where you're at because of the decisions you made. And that's exactly where you want to be, because you made those decisions. So I don't understand people staying in bad situations. I understand that people want to be there, and it doesn't look good from the outside. And so that's why I say I don't understand it, because I would always strive to make whatever better that I could.
Great.
Boom.
Conclusion.
Boom. TradCon based. Red pill. Whatever all these terms are.
All right. Have a great one, everybody.
Bye-bye.